Hello, welcome back to Inside the Helmet. My name is Michael. I've been a lifelong quarterback and general sports person, if you could say. And joining me today is once again my father, who has been around the game of football as a fan, as a player, as a coach, as a broadcaster, even for over 50 years. So, thank you guys for tuning in with us today.
Yeah, thanks for making me sound old, Michael.
Yeah, yeah.
I appreciate it.
Don't want to sound old, don't be old.
Yeah, good point.
All right, how are we starting today?
Well, I think with Inside the Helmet, we always try to start out our first segment talking about things that the average fan up in the stands may not know that players on the field know. And you playing the quarterback position since you were, as they say, knee high to a grasshopper, know quite a bit about that. And I've coached too many quarterbacks on at least the youth football level to we both have a lot of insights on this about what makes a good quarterback. And I know you and I have had discussions many times about things that we've seen that really make a difference. So if there's any young quarterbacks out there, you might want to tune in particularly to this part. I know, Michael, for you kind of have a specific interest in watching quarterback arm angles. Can you talk a little bit about that and explain it to people who maybe don't pay attention to such things?
For sure, yeah. I feel like in the modern age of quarterback coaching, there's been this heavy emphasis on arm angle because if you look back at, say 20 years ago and beyond, even older, even Tom Brady is a really good example of this. There's been a shift in the way that throwing motion and arm angle in particular is taught because if you go back and look, particularly I mentioned Tom Brady, because if you look back at the beginning of his career, and even maybe as recent as like 10 years ago or so, he was very much a traditional over the top passer. He would, dip his shoulders even a little bit and almost look like he's falling away to the left,
Mm.
trying to emphasize that over the top exaggeration because that's what was taught for the majority of quarterbacking history. But in the recent decade or so, there's been an emphasis, and not to say that there haven't been, rogue quarterbacks who would do this, say, 40 years ago, but really in the last decade, there's been a lot more research done because a lot of the reasoning behind wanting to be so high and over the top with your arm was believing that it was not only best, for accuracy, but also health wise, that it would help prevent injury. But they found that's not entirely true. Throwing sidearm, throwing at three quarters is not necessarily a health risk. And so you see guys like a Patrick Mahomes, like a Josh Allen, like a Matthew Stafford, that have really been making great use of different arm angles, not just, oh, I'm going to throw a sidearm all the time instead of over the top. They're adjusting their arm angle on the fly for what is needed. And so I feel like when talking about arm angles, it's not necessarily, pointing the finger and say, no, this is how you should do it and never defer from this specific arm angle, whether you're teaching sidearm or over the top or something in between. It's more so about trying to be versatile enough and smart enough, frankly, to know what each situation calls for. Because even if you're running the same exact play in practice over and over and over again, it might not always look the exact same, especially in a game when there are so many other circumstances and heck, there's a whole other team that you have to account for and try and combat. Um, Being able to think on the fly and being comfortable no matter what situation you find yourself in is an incredibly, incredibly important and useful tool to have as a quarterback in the modern age. Um, that
No, I
being said,
wasn't. I wasn't a quarterback. I was a wide receiver. But
Hmm.
my understanding back in the dinosaur days was that the reason they taught the over the top was because you wanted to be able to avoid as much as you could the defensive lineman jumping up. And at least the coaches back when I played said if you were throwing sidearm or three quarters or something, the ball was coming out at a lower trajectory and therefore had a better chance of being blocked.
I'm sure, but you can probably find if you dig deep enough through the archives of NFL history and just football in general. You'll see plenty of over the top passes get batted down. Heck, even a little slip screen to the running back where you're trying to loft it lightly over the defensive line. Those get batted down all the time.
Hmm.
I don't think it has as much to do with arm angle because if you're throwing sidearm, you can throw around the defensive lineman. It doesn't always have to be over the top.
Yeah, you didn't see that quite as much. I know when I've been coaching youth quarterbacks, the arm angle at the age that I coach at is not always as important because you don't have 6 foot 7 inch defensive linemen.
Hmm.
For me, the first thing, the fundamental thing for me, has to do with the footwork, and that means I find a lot of young quarterbacks who are just starting out don't really understand whether they're in shotgun or under the center. That when they get the ball, the defensive linemen are coming at them, and they tend to just kind of stand there with their feet close together. They don't have a good solid base. They don't turn their body sideways. They're used to standing with both toes pointing at their target, just playing catch. And so
Hmm.
you have to teach them that look, as soon as you get the ball in your hand, your feet need to be moving either to the right or left if it's a rollout, or straight back if it's a drop back pass. And
Hmm.
you need to learn how to set your base uh, while also controlling your eyes, because the free safety, as we all know, is going to be watching and moving with the eyes of the quarterback. So that's
Hmm.
where I tend to focus on the younger level, is with getting that solid base, learning how to step toward your target, and controlling your eyes, trying to control the defense with your eyes.
May I add something onto that?
Of course.
So one thing that, of course, I'm not quite done with my playing days yet, so I'm still being coached on how to be a better quarterback, even as old as I am. We talk about you being old. I'm getting up there. Sometimes I feel it. One thing that,
Two whole decades. Wow. Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
and an extra year. Um, but one thing that even I'm still being taught, not that it's news to me, but it's something being preached, is always be ready to throw, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And what that means is like with your, because quarterbacking starts from the ground up, literally. You can't throw a football well if your feet aren't set. If your lower body is all out of whack, you can't just leave it all up to your upper body to make the throw. It's going to be inaccurate. You're going to lose power. So many other things could go wrong.
Yeah.
So it starts with your base. Um, and one thing that is incredibly crucial in what I've been taught is always be in a position where you're ready to throw, ready to get the ball out of your hands like that. Because you never know when your receiver's going to, pop open, and you only have a split second to make the decision or you'll be late.
Or when your offensive tackle's going to lose his block and suddenly you've got a defensive lineman running at your face.
That too.
Uh,
That's a
yeah.
very good point.
Yeah.
So you can't just kind of be lazy with it until you kind of decide to go throw. You have to always be in a position with a nice wide base where you could get the ball out with good power and accuracy if needed.
Yeah. Speaking of quarterbacks, we once again this past week saw a very memorable game that we didn't expect going in was going to be what it turned out to be, and
Hmm.
that's our beloved Texas Longhorns,
Hmm. Okay.
who are, I honestly think, young team. This isn't their year, but uh, but they go into Mississippi State for what used to be kind of a routine victory and everything, and they fall way behind. Um, and I know that we had a viewer question about that this
Hmm.
week that we wanted to be sure to address. If you want to throw the question out
Sure.
there.
So yeah, this is something that we actually just kind of on our own have discussed sometimes, where feels like the Texas Longhorns for many years, and especially in the Sark era, um, in recent years, have really been playing either up or down to their opponent. If that makes sense. It just always feels like it's a close game, unless we're playing someone like a Sam Houston, you know. But even then, for the first half or so, it can still look like a close game. But that's a real problem for a team that has national championship aspirations. You can't be playing a team that should be seen as a very much inferior opponent like Mississippi State and have it come down to the wire the way it did. You know,
Yeah.
that's one of the closest endings to a football game I've ever
Oh,
seen.
yeah.
And
Very,
Darts,
very exciting, but it should have
mhm,
never been that close,
exactly.
based upon talent.
Loved it as a
But
football fan, hated it as a Texas fan.
sure. But what was the
um,
question? What was the viewer
yeah,
question?
that leads me into our question, which is how can Texas look at games like the Mississippi State game and say, okay, phew, we escaped out of there with the win. Now, how do we? What do we take away from this? What does Texas take away from a game like that, so that they can prevent getting into these dogfights against worse opponents going
Yeah.
forward? What do they need to do in order to fix that so that stops happening? Because heck, we saw it the week before against Kentucky.
Right.
Like this is not a new thing at all.
It's, as we know, it's hard to be at maximum efficiency and motivation and emotion for an entire football season. I think
Mhm.
sometimes guys kind of circle the win on the calendar before they ever get on the field, and the other team is super motivated because they have nothing to lose. But in this particular game, just from a strategy standpoint, what I saw early on was that Texas scored on their second play.
Mhm.
And I was worried when they did that. I mean, the very first play, a little swing pass to the running back. He goes down to the 5 yard line. It's like a 70-yard play. And then, of course, they score on the second play. And I think that tends to take the wind out of the sails a little bit.
Mhm. You get
Um,
comfortable. You
you
think
get
it's going to be an
real
easy ride.
you get real comfortable. And Mississippi
Mhm.
State, to their credit, fought back.
Mhm.
And it's like they say, you punch the bully in the nose, and suddenly he's on his heels. But it seemed like for Texas, they have not had a running game this year, and it goes to the youth.
Surprisingly.
Well, no, not for me. It goes to the youth of their offensive line. They lost four starters from last year, and I think that the other teams know that, and they're mixing up different blitz packages for the offensive line. And it seems like that the offensive line, I think it's more that they're young. We know Texas has the athletes, but they just are not picking up the blitz. And so Texas is facing a lot of that. Meanwhile, Sarkeesian, who is, known as being a good play caller, has become determined in the first half in particular. This is the game we're going to establish the run. And they stay committed to it even when it's not working. When Texas came back and ultimately got the victory, they were in desperation mode and running basically a 2-minute offense. And that really is, I think, for offensive linemen, that's easier. You're just, you're blocking, you're pass blocking. They're not blitzing as much because they're trying to protect a big lead. They're playing a soft shell in the secondary. And so for Texas, I'd like to see them come out, first of all, learn how not to get deflated if they get an early lead, but work in, if the run's not working, you got to run a little bit, but work in more play action passing, because once Arch Manning finally started throwing regularly, seemed like for he kind of got in a little bit of a rhythm. And So that was
You
my
did.
take on the
Yeah,
game.
it was a very impressive, especially during that comeback in the fourth quarter. You
Yeah,
know, our Arch played incredibly, only to get knocked out at the very end,
right.
and have his backup come in and kind of take all the glory.
By the way, quick comment on the backup.
Mhm,
The Longhorn fans, we live in Austin, so we hear all of this. The Longhorn
mhm.
fans who are being critical of Arch, that are going, "Oh, well, they need to play the backup quarterback now. Look at how good he did." I mean, how many passes did this guy throw? He's
Yeah.
played for like three or four teams, and you and I both saw all he did was throw a fade route in the end zone, which is
Mhm.
very, very basic. Any decent
Yeah.
quarterback knows how to throw it, and he almost threw it out of bounds. I was shocked that they called it a touchdown, uh, but
I'm shocked they called it, but I
I was
think it was
happy
the
they
right
did.
call.
Yeah,
Yeah. I agree with the call. If I had thought that it was out of bounds, I'd be saying as much.
sure.
But
But I mean, I give him credit, and I'm really
Mhm.
super happy that he did it. But
Sure.
throwing a fade pattern is one of the very first and easiest passes that you teach even a young quarterback, because all he's doing is lofting it up there and hoping his receiver can go get it.
Yeah.
And by the width of a fingernail, he kept it in bounds enough for the receiver to make an incredible play. That doesn't mean that he is suddenly now elevating himself above Arch Manning.
Yeah, for sure. I think people love to really, I guess the best way to put it is just overdo the hype, buy
Well,
into the
the
hype and the gossip, for
the
lack
the,
of a better
the
word. They,
backup
they love
quarterback
that
is
drama.
always backup quarterback's always popular if your
Hmm.
starter is under fire. So,
Yeah.
um, okay, well,
One last thing before we
yeah,
maybe move away from the Texas game.
hmm
You mentioned Steve Sarkisian, how he always gets touted as this amazing offensive play caller, offensive genius, but I have a very specific gripe with that man. When we're faced with a third and long, even a heck, third and 20 or more, and we're running a screen pass to the
yeah,
wide receiver that gets like maybe 10 yards, but now it's fourth and 10, and that's just offensive suicide. You're punting the ball away either way. If you throw an incompletion or you gain only 10 of the 20 yards you need, you're going to punt either way in most scenarios. So why are you being so conservative,
yeah. That
especially when
doesn't.
you've done it so much that the defense is seeing it coming now, and now your screen passes are losing 2 yards instead of
Well,
gaining any?
that particular, the way that you described it, doesn't bother me as much. If
Mhm.
you're kind of playing for the punt and you're playing the field position game, sometimes that is the right play uh,
Maybe I just play too
to
much Madden,
call.
but
I
I
mean,
hate playing for the punt.
yeah, I mean the defense is sitting back there waiting for the deep
Mm,
pass, and I don't have a problem with that. The times when, and this is not a Sarkeesian thing, this is football in general. The
mhm,
times when I'm jumping out of my chair is when it's or third and seven,
mm.
and they throw a 5 yard pass
That
to
happens
like
too.
a
That kind of
to
fits
a
in my complaint.
yeah, I mean, to like a tight end,
Mhm,
and he gets tackled a yard short. If it's a manageable third and five, third and seven, third and nine,
mhm.
throw it past the sticks. Have
Yeah,
your receiver run several yards past the sticks. And then if he gets open and he catches it, it's a first down. I can't tell you the number of times that, the check down and you're just hoping a guy can make somebody miss. You got to come up with better offensive design than that. Whether you flood the zone, whether you run, we don't call it a pick play, we call it a rub play, because a pick is illegal, and a rub
mhm.
where one wide receiver kind of crashes into a defensive back and pops somebody open. It always seems like other teams, when I'm rooting for a team, trying to get a defensive stop, the other teams always seem to find a way to do it, and I don't know that that's a strength of Sarkeesian.
I yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
I think maybe why it upsets me so much to see such conservative play calling is I had a coach one time that I am not particularly fond of, never was, that actually would do that. Would do just that. You know, it would be maybe 3rd and 9, and we're calling a wide receiver screen or something like that rather than throwing the ball downfield, trying to move the chains.
Yeah.
And the way he described it was playing complementary football.
Hmm.
You know, trying
Yeah.
to set up the team for longer term success by helping them get a better punt. You know what helps the team? Scoring points, throwing the ball downfield like a man. That helps the
You'd make
team.
a great Raiders coach because the Oakland slash Los Angeles
Hmm.
slash Los Angeles Raiders were always a big fan when Al Davis
And
was
Vegas.
running the team, and Vegas,
Hmm.
yeah, of
I always see clips of John Gruden, and everyone in the comments is like, man, that guy just breathes football. I love listening to John Gruden talk.
sure.
It gets me fired up, ready to run through my door.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Gruden's great to listen to. So what's your next topic there?
We want to talk about the Cowboy game a little bit, or just kind of, eh.
I don't want to talk a whole lot about the way the Cowboys looked last weekend.
Cowboys lost. Moving on.
Yeah, I mean their defense is last in the league, and they're missing three starters in the secondary, which means that the worst defense in the league
Got even
is now
worse.
playing backups.
Mm-hmm.
And as
Yeah.
much as their offense has been ballyhooed
Mm-hmm.
this year, you know, if your defense just isn't stopping anybody,
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
starting to
what's the point in scoring 30 points a game if you're going to give up 40?
right.
What's the
They're
point?
everybody that it seems like they play. Their quarterback has it's a new career high in passing yards and
Yeah.
efficiency, and uh,
I saw a tweet, I think it was the other day, saying that the Cowboys are going to let Kyler Murray throw for 400 yards.
well, yeah. Um,
Yeah,
I mean, I wouldn't be shocked by it.
me neither.
I just hope that there are better days ahead. Maybe Cowboys, you know, the announcers are even taking jabs at the Cowboys every week, saying, "Well, the
Mhm.
problem is they don't have a pass rush, and if they just had that guy, and you know, you're
Mhm.
thinking, well, they had that guy and they let him go, Micah
And
Parsons.
now there are trade rumors for Max
Yeah,
Crosby.
yeah, the Raiders aren't letting Max Crosby go.
No. Hmm.
I was a little bit maybe not surprised, but they did spend a draft pick this year on the Boston College pass rusher who had like 16 sacks last year, and maybe they were counting on him being like a mini Micah Parsons. And I don't know that if he has a sack this year,
I don't even know who you're
it's only
talking
one.
about.
Yeah, I'm
I
not
don't
sure
even
I
know
can
his
pronounce
name.
not sure I can pronounce his name,
Oh
but
God.
they mentioned that from time to time, and you know whatever it isn't working. I have liked what I've seen on offense. I've kind of
Hmm.
actually even sort of liked the head coach, which was surprising.
Yeah,
I didn't think I would, but
me either. I
the
thought he'd be
defense is
another
horrible.
like kind of mid 2000s post Barry Switzer type. You
Yeah,
know, where they hang around for maybe a year or two before being replaced for the next Jerry boy.
right.
You know,
Well,
so.
I mean, the it's funny because the Cowboys are so divergent with what their offense can do versus what their defense can't do,
Hmm.
and that means a mediocre team. And look, they're 3-4-1, which is mediocre.
Yep.
And the Bill Parcells was famous for saying, "You are what your record says you are," and
Mhm.
that's as painful as it is. That's true with my Cowboys, our Cowboys this year.
It's
They're mediocre right now.
mhm. It's really really nice that you just mentioned that Parcells quote. You are as good as your record says. Or you are what your record says you are. Is that right? Is that what you
Yeah,
said?
yeah,
Okay.
that's the quote.
Because that leads us nicely into talking about a few games that we wanted to discuss this
Okay.
week. First off, the Bills and the Chiefs. They play in Buffalo, at 3:25 p.m. Central Time on Sunday.
Yeah.
Um, did you know the Chiefs are 5-3?
I was aware that they had lost a couple, and
They
I've
started
got
really slow.
I've got, and I hate to admit this because when he first came in the league, Mahomes was revolutionary, and I was
hmm
a massive. I was saying he's my favorite non-Dallas Cowboy.
I
I've
said
got,
that
I've
too.
got, I've got a little bit of Chiefs fatigue at this
Yeah,
point, just watching because I feel like I'm watching the same show, and who knows, they may win another Super Bowl. They're always a
yeah,
contender. I find myself these days actually leaning toward I'd like to see Buffalo win. I mean,
yeah.
Josh Allen's. We could do a whole segment on Josh Allen. Maybe we will at
hmm
some point,
But
but
probably.
yeah, probably will. But um, I'm just kind of wanting to see something different. So uh, I got to admit, I'm kind of rooting not against Mahomes ever
hmm
or Xavier Worthy, hook 'em horns, lifetime
hmm
Longhorn, but kind of hoping Buffalo pulls that one out.
I'm also really tired of the whole Travis Kelsey and Taylor Swift nonsense.
Well,
I think that
yeah,
plays a big part in
they've
it.
worn that out.
I absolutely. Um, A big reason why I want to mention this and why your quote from Parcells plays so nicely is because I feel like after the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season, the Chiefs were sitting at what 1-3, 2-2, not very
Yeah,
well, and Buffalo was still undefeated. Um, and there were talks of, oh, are the Bills just the best team in football right now, and are the Chiefs just done being dominant? But now suddenly, a few weeks later, the Chiefs are 5-3, the Bills are 5-2.
yeah,
They very much seem to have leveled out, and they seem to be on very different trajectories. If you look at just the past handful of weeks, how is that going to play into such a matchup, such a I guess interesting and exciting matchup over the past few years. I know in the regular season, if anything, the Bills have been the team to get the upper hand against Kansas City more often than not. But then come playoff time, that's where Mahomes shines brightest.
yeah.
Um,
That's where it matters. And if the
mhm.
Bills are if the Bills are ever going to take that step, it really matters more
It
what they do
has
in
to
the
be now.
playoffs.
Yeah,
So
the
yeah,
Bills need to win this game.
yeah,
I Like you, I'm a little sick of the Chiefs, like I mentioned, because of the whole Travis Kelsey, Taylor Swift
sure.
nonsense. But I also, yeah, I really like Josh Allen. He's really exciting to watch. Um, Very fun, likable guy.
I
The
remember
Bills
back
are kind
when
of likable team as well.
back in the 90s when the Cowboys were still relevant and they won 3 out of 4 Super Bowls,
hmm
was the first time I really ever heard somebody talk about being fatigued with a team. Now, these were not Dallas Cowboy fans. They were the
hmm
people in the rest of the league were tired of watching the Cowboys win Super Bowls. Of course, I loved it. I was hoping and
hmm
I expected it to go on forever. And but
Yeah.
no, I understand that whole fatigue thing. I think the NFL needs some new, fresh blood and
hmm
some new, and maybe the Chiefs don't make a Super Bowl for a couple of years, and then I think I would root for Mahomes again to get back there in
hmm
his later years and do it again.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
What other games you got?
Oh, we got to talk about the Cowboys. Um,
Um, well,
just a little bit. And they're
yeah,
playing the Cardinals. Cardinals are 2-5. We're not a whole lot better at 3-4-1.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna watch it because I'm a diehard Cowboys fan
hmm
for 50
And it's
years.
also Monday Night Football, so
Sure. And I fully expect to see Kyler Murray just have the game of his life. And it's just a question of
yeah,
if the Cowboys can outscore them or
yeah.
not.
I mean, I like high scoring football games, so
Sure.
if that game ended 65-63, I'd be
Uh,
happy.
yeah, that may be a bit
Um,
much, but 43 to
Maybe.
42 might not. So.
Yeah,
Um,
I wouldn't hate it.
hey,
I
if it comes down to that, the Cowboys have the best kicker in the league by
for
far.
sure.
So
But we didn't get to really see him, you know, do what we all thought he might get a chance to do, and have a shot at the record
yeah, right
in
before
Denver.
halftime, the announcers were talking about that, and
Mhm.
then it just didn't happen. So
Yeah,
um,
unfortunate.
maybe someday.
Maybe someday.
Yeah,
Um, Before we move away from football, I wanted to also talk about the Texas Longhorns as well, not just because we're fans, but because we have Vanderbilt this weekend. Back
yeah.
in Austin, right? For the first time in over a month on
Yeah,
Saturday.
Longhorns have been on the road if you include the Oklahoma, game
Mm-hmm.
up in Dallas, and
Yeah.
the I think Texas is going to be pretty fired up based upon their
Mm-hmm.
comeback, and of course Vanderbilt's ranked 9 and Texas is ranked I think 20th, so Vanderbilt
Yeah.
is technically the favorite,
Which is
and
insane.
their quarterback gave them some fits last year, and I believe he's back again.
It's kind of like
Uh,
the Lions in
a
the
little
NFL, if
bit,
you wanted to make a comparison. A team that's been historically awful for so
yeah,
many years, and then suddenly they're really good,
yeah.
kind of
Well,
out of nowhere.
mm, well, I think that
Um,
a couple seasons ago when they upset Alabama, something shifted in them, and they
mhm,
became a little bit the way Boise State did for a while when they
mhm.
upset Oklahoma in that bowl game many years ago. Suddenly now people are interested, really good athletes are interested in going there. And I still think if you just go on talent alone, I mean, Texas recruits 5 stars. Vanderbilt is
So does
probably,
Vandy.
well, I don't know
They
about
are
that, but
now.
Vandy probably recruits 3 stars and 4 stars. But if your 3 stars and 4 stars are performing better than Texas and their five
Mhm.
stars, it could be an upset. But in Austin, that is going to
Yeah,
be tough.
that's
That's going to be tough for Vanderbilt. I think
for sure.
Texas probably is in for a real fight, and especially depending upon if Arch Manning's able to play. Um, because
Yeah,
if he's not, I see Sarkeesian saying, "Well, we have to rely on our running game more." And as much as I was impressed at times with Trey Wisner of making people miss, this year I've seen him dance a lot. And Cedric, is it Cedric Baxter? Help me out with
CJ
this.
Baxter.
CJ, thank you,
Yep.
CJ Baxter, who came in as a 5 star running back for Texas and can't stay healthy. When he
Yep.
has been on the field, including last week, I don't see the burst. I don't see the spark. Texas,
Sadly.
I always compared to the Texas great running backs of old who were really highly recruited and touted. The Ricky Williams, the Eric Metcalfs, the people who were making plays, and so far C.J. Baxter looks like just a solid college running back. I don't see Texas having the speed that they used to have, the advantage against other teams, with the exception, of course, of their punt returner, Niblet,
What
who,
position does he play regularly?
well, they put him at
Is
punt
he like a
returner, and
backup receiver or something, or a DB?
I'm not, I'm not even sure, but they've been
Wow,
working in some packages where he's in the backfield with the quarterback,
very good.
hoping to get him out in space. And whether they hand him the ball or throw him swing passes, the problem I've seen with Niblet, great speed, but he really goes down with just a breath of air. He doesn't break tackles or anything. It doesn't take a lot to get him on the ground. So you've really got to get him out in space.
You know what
He's
Texas
not.
needs to do?
What's that?
They need to have let's say Texas at midfield. They're on the 50-yard line. They have Niblet go stand on their own goal line. And then
Yeah.
Arch Manning, when he takes the snap, throw it backwards as high as he can, like a punt. That way he'll treat it like a punt return and he'll score.
You know what? Somebody somewhere, maybe not throw it back as far as he can, but somebody somewhere needs to try that one time with when you have your most dynamic person as a punt returner, put him back 15, 20 yards
Mm-hmm.
and treat it
Deep
sort of
snap
like
it
a
to
punt
him.
return. well, or turn around and throw it back to him
Yeah.
because those defensive linemen and linebackers, the starters, they're not used to playing special teams and maybe
Hmm.
making tackles like that in the open field.
Yeah.
Um, it'd be interesting. It would either be a genius idea or the
They're
dumbest
terrible.
idea of the day. Um, I don't know. Interesting idea.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
I just thought of that right now.
yeah. I mean, why not, right? What have you got to
Hmm.
lose? So
Exactly.
create the open space by throwing the ball backwards 15 yards, and
Hmm.
if it works, then you get to be touted as a genius, and if it blows up in your face, then
You
you
might
have
get
to
fired.
answer, yeah, oh, what are you thinking, coach? Come on. So
Yeah.
yeah, yep.
Yep. Do we want to make a prediction since it'll actually be a really interesting and close game?
Um, they're still listing Arch Manning. He's returned to practice, but he's still
That's right. I wanted to mention
questionable.
something about that.
Yeah, he's still questionable. So
Hmm.
I think so much depends upon whether he plays or not and the offensive strategies. I
Hmm.
think I think Texas escapes with a close victory
I could
either
see that.
way. At least that's what I'm hoping for. I mean, I don't think
Hmm.
I could pick against them, but
Yeah.
um, but I also wouldn't be shocked if they lost.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too surprised. I do think that there's a good chance for Arch to play. If anyone saw on social media today, or I think it was today, that Arch got pulled over by the Austin Police Department. And he was driving, so he,
Yeah,
he can't be too concussed if he's driving like that. So
right. Huh.
I hope
Did they
hoping
say
he'll
what they
play.
pull? Did they pull him over for speeding or weaving, or did they say?
I'm not sure.
Huh.
I didn't look that
If he
far
was
into it.
driving and weaving, then maybe that concussion is worse
Should I
than we
look it up right
thought.
now?
No, it's okay.
Maybe
That was
next time.
it. Yeah, interesting though.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how this game's going to go.
Yeah.
Eventually, Texas is going to lose their third game and they're going to be out of the playoffs. They could have and should have maybe the last 2 weeks, and they somehow
Mhm.
managed to pull it out in overtime. But it feels inevitable to me that obviously this is not their year. They lost too many players. I mean, if they would have had I mean, it's the thing about college football. You have to rebuild every year. If they had, think about the players they've lost over the last couple of years, their entire offensive line. I mean, if they still had Xavier Worthy, Matthew Golden, uh, you know, probably goes beyond 2 years, but Bijan Robinson uh, back there, then I think we're talking about a whole different thing. This is just a
Mhm.
young team, so they could
Why don't they
they could win or
change
lose
it?
any week.
Why don't they change the NCAA rules to allow 10 years of eligibility without any red shirts or anything? Then we can really see some super teams.
Well, I mean, with the NIL in there, there's
Hmm.
not the incentive to go pro as a junior anymore.
Hmm.
Some guys might be able to make more in college as a senior than they can as a rookie in the NFL.
Crazy. We'll
Yeah,
probably have to come back in a future episode and talk about NIL because I'm very conflicted when it comes to that.
I think a lot of people
I have
are.
very I have very mixed feelings about it, but we can get into that another time.
Sure. Okay.
Um,
A little bit of time left. I know that you
mhm,
want to talk about
yep.
one
Oh,
other
here goes
question.
Michael talking about Formula One.
One other
Um,
question that arose this
yeah.
week about Formula One. It's a good question though. Tell us
Yeah,
the question first, and then tell us your answer.
all right. So the question has to do with Max Verstappen, of course, my guy. And there have been a few races, a handful of races this year that maybe didn't quite go Max's way, and he lost out on some valuable points now that he's well and truly in the championship fight. That the losing out on those points for one reason or another, not even necessarily um, of his own fault. Those points that he didn't earn are proving to be more and more valuable as he closes in. on the championship lead, but is still a little ways behind. So the question is just how many points has Max lost out on due to factors outside of his control, such as the car maybe not working or being that fast or competitive, or a penalty or being crashed into. So I have it pulled up right now. I have a few races I want to talk about. Round four in Bahrain, Max finished, I believe that's fifth, I want to say. No, sixth, and scored 8 points in Bahrain. Bahrain was really the first race where the Red Bull car's weaknesses showed their ugly side. And the car was just not there all weekend. There's a funny clip of Max in the first free practice session. I think it was the first one of the practice sessions where he got really mad at the car and like slammed the gas to like make the car spin out a little bit. To say, I'll show you what it's like to not be in control car. Um, but he only took away 8 points from that weekend, where if the car had been there, he probably could have taken away at least seven more. So I'll say at 7 points missed out in Bahrain. Then moving ahead to Spain, this one's debatable whether it's entirely Max's fault or not. I do put some blame on him. This is the race where he got a penalty for essentially just hitting George Russell, hitting him, being in a position where George turned into him. However you want to call it, however you want to assign blame, Max ended up, due to his penalty, only finishing 10th in that race
Hmm.
once all the penalties were applied, and he took away only 1 point in a race where he probably could have had 12 or 15. So I'll say that's 11 missed out points in Spain. So that's what we're up to 18 now.
Yeah.
Moving ahead just 2 rounds to Austria, where on lap one, less than 30 seconds or so into the race, on a track where Max is historically dominant, he's won there like 5 times. He gets taken out by Kimi Antonelli of the Mercedes team, and of course doesn't score anything that weekend. Um, I think we could easily put Max down at least for the 15 points one earns for finishing third. So we'll say 15 as a safe estimate. But knowing Max, he could have won that race. So that's 17 plus 15. We're up to 32 missed out points. Moving into Hungary, that's another case like Bahrain where the car just wasn't there. He finished ninth, only scored 2 points. Um, I think if the Red Bull car had been there that weekend, he could have finished fifth. He could have taken away, 10 points. So we're up to 40 in total. And then ever since then, that takes us into Max's incredible run of form, where he's finished second, first, second, first, third. Um, so 40 points that he's missed out on, not even taking into account how this would affect Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, the people he's fighting for the championship. If he had just had those 40 points, we add them on, he is sitting, he would be sitting anyway with 361 points, which would be 4 points ahead of Lando Norris, and
Yeah.
Max would be leading the championship if he had those 40 or so points that he has missed out on due to one unfortunate happening or another. Um, so very very good question. And it's very interesting just to see how these seemingly little things add up over the course of a season. You think,
So I
oh,
have another.
okay,
I have another quote for you,
oh boy.
and this one came from of all people, the guy who was the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys before Roger Staubach. Apologies to Craig Morton because I'm skipping over him, but he wound up being a broadcaster of Monday Night Football, and they called him Dandy Don Meredith.
Yep.
And um, Everybody knows that at the end of the game, when the play was made that decided the game, he would sing, "Turn out the lights, the party's over." That was one of his things. But one of his other quotes was they were talking about, well, if this had happened and if that had happened. And Dandy
Yep.
Don was a old country Texas boy that could come up with a quote in a heartbeat. And his famous quote about that was, "If ifs and buts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas."
It's
And
really funny you mentioned that. I actually have a quote from Max Verstappen that is a tiny bit more vulgar, not terrible or anything. I could certainly say it on here, but it's very funny that you mentioned that. If I may.
yeah, I mean, it's your
So
show.
so after the race in Miami last year, where Lando Norris benefited from a safety car that allowed him to get the timing right with his pit stop and go on to win his first ever F1, or not win his first F1 race, but achieve his first victory in F1 in a race where, had maybe one or two things gone a little differently, Max would have won. But he still finished second, not really any harm or foul, anything there. But they asked him after the race, when they got all three podium finishers sat down together for an interview. They asked they asked Max his feelings on, if the safety car hadn't come out when it had, or if this or that hadn't happened, could he have won the race? And he said, talking about if my mom had balls, she'd be my dad.
Ouch. Oh boy.
Yeah. But he
True,
was
but
defending
yeah,
Lando
a
in
little,
there in that
little
situation.
descriptive.
So, mhm,
Well, uh, I know that you could do a lot of ifs. Maybe we'll do an if segment sometime, because if
that would be fun.
I still think if the referees had ruled properly that Dez caught it, I think Tony Romo has a Super Bowl, at least a Super Bowl
Mhm.
appearance. And in the famous The Catch game with the Niners and the
I was
Cowboys in
about to say
1981,
that
uh, yes, Dwight Clark made a great
if they
catch,
had called the
but
horse collar.
right. Drew Pierce, the
Mhm,
Cowboys got the ball back with a minute and a half to go and drove to midfield. Danny White completes a pass to my guy, Drew Pearson, breaking over the middle, about to run away from everybody and put one more stamp on his Hall of Fame career for a miracle comeback. And Eric Wright, the rookie safety, reaches out with one hand and horse collars him. It wasn't against the rules at the time,
mhm,
and barely, just by a fingertip, brings Drew to the ground, but they're still at the 50-yard line. So you're thinking, well, one or two more completed passes and they're kicking a game-winning field goal and everybody forgets about
mhm,
the catch. But instead, it's a low snap from center in the shotgun. Danny White can't grab it, winds up ball fumbling around on the ground. 49ers recover, they go to the Super Bowl and start a dynasty. So
mhm.
I think that's part of why we watch sports, because the if
Oh yeah,
happens all the time,
for sure.
and
And for one
the
more,
unpredictable.
if Jackie Smith had caught it.
You know what? Super Bowl 13 was the heartbreak of my
Hmm.
childhood. I was 13 because I'm the same age as the Super Bowl.
Hmm.
So Jackie Smith not catching the Hall of Fame tight end who came over to the Cowboys for 1 year at the end of his career, and dropping that pass in the end zone, I know that haunted him forever. But the game was still very much on, and there were many plays to left to be made or not made. And
Yeah,
to me, the one that gets overlooked, everybody talks about Jackie Smith, but the thing is, the Steelers, the Cowboys had drawn close, and the Steelers then surged ahead again. They scored a touchdown because Franco Harris ran right up the middle, and a referee got in the way of safety Charlie Waters, who could have made a tackle for about a 5 yard gain. Instead, it was a 25-yard touchdown run.
ooh,
And then they kicked off, and they did a bit of a squib kick, because I guess maybe you do that when you're afraid of the returner.
Hmm.
and they squibbed it. And one of the blockers who was in front of the returner happened to be Randy White, Hall of Fame defensive tackle, the
I
manster,
get where you're going with this.
total stud. But he had broken his hand in the NFC Championship game and was wearing a cast on his hand, but he could still play defensive tackle.
Hmm.
Somehow, for some reason, because they squibbed it at Randy White, maybe they did it intentionally, so credit to the Steelers. Randy White picks up the ball instinctively and starts running with it. And you got a defensive tackle running with the ball with a cast on his hand, and you know what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
First hit, the ball's going to pop out. Steelers recover. And on the very next play, Bradshaw throws that famous lofting pass up the seam to Lynn Swan, and he jumps up, you know, 30 feet in the air, however high, and comes down with it, a very acrobatic wide receiver, barely in bounds at the back of the end zone. And now it's a game that the Cowboys have to come from way, way behind instead of being in the game. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, the Jackie Smith play, it was one of several that went against the Cowboys in that game. Even talking about it, I still hurt from that. I'll always hurt from that
Sure.
because I was living in Northern Virginia at the time, surrounded by what we then called Redskin fans, who were the arch rivals at the time. The Eagles are now, but at the time it was the Redskins. And oh my gosh, going to school the next day was awful. So anyway, get me
Yikes.
started on football history, and we'll be going way
Sometimes
over time.
sometimes when a receiver of mine drops a pass that I feel like they should have caught, I hit that Staubach kind of reaction where he just kind of his knees bend, he kind of flops to the ground like, oh, I can't believe it. I do
Yep.
that. I've
Well,
always done that.
having
Yeah,
played wide receiver, I believe me, I every good wide receiver out there has had those moments where they drop something, and nobody
yeah,
feels worse than that wide receiver.
yep.
So,
um, I know you mentioned we're way over time, and we definitely are. So not gonna go as in depth on what happened in Mexico in F1 this past weekend as I'd maybe like to. I'll make a separate little clip about it for Instagram, but I wanted to get your take. We were discussing this before we started recording. I want to talk to you about momentum, because like I mentioned
Tom
before,
Herman says there's no such thing.
well,
The old
Tom
Longhorns
Herman's an
coach.
idiot. He got fired for a reason.
That was the dumbest statement I ever saw. Yeah, heard.
um, But I mentioned before how the past month and a half or so, Max Verstappen was on an incredible run of form and certainly had all the momentum behind him, winning all those races and coming second when he wasn't winning. Um, but I feel like in Mexico, there was a little bit of a shift. Even though Max came third, even though Max did close the gap to the overall championship lead by 4 points, not a huge dent, but at least it's going in the right direction. Lando Norris, one of the main championship rivals and the now leader of the championship once again, won. And he himself has been on a great run these past few races as well, coming second in Italy, where Max won. He did come, what is that, seventh in Azerbaijan, where Max won. He came third in Singapore, where Max came second. He came second in Austin to Max's victory, and then he won in Mexico. Lando has been right on Max's heels. Even when Max has been doing well, Lando's been kind of one or two steps behind, and so it feels after this win in Mexico, it kind of takes the air out of Max's sails,
Yeah.
so to speak. And so I wanted to get your take on that, being a big believer in momentum. How can you, when you're trying to mount a comeback and you do well and you have all this momentum, but then one or two setbacks happen, how do you come back from that to
Okay. I'm gonna
find that momentum?
yeah, I'm going to try to give you the shorter answer,
Sure.
but it's true in all sports. You get a guy in basketball who hits a few shots, he now feels that he can hit any shot. You get a
Hmm.
baseball player who gets a few hits in a row, and now he's got confidence and
Mhm.
electricity running through. I'm a believer that when that happens, that your brain and your muscles probably connect on a different level
Mhm.
than they do if you're in the doldrums, if you're in a slump of some sort. To throw out another quote, this being, I believe, from Sir Isaac Newton, an object in motion tends to stay in motion.
Yep.
Uh, so if you are on that roll, then
Yep.
it
It's one of the laws
clearly
of gravity.
momentum gives you it's just
Mhm.
laws of physics or something. But
Yeah.
how do you get it back is the question
Yeah.
when the other team is pumped up and they're the defense is swarming against you because they're all fired up now. We can see it in their body language. I think, and I'm going to go for a really weird. I'm full of quotes tonight. I'm
It's
going to
awesome.
go for a really random quote from one of my favorite movies, Bill Murray movie from the early '90s called
Mhm.
"What About Bob." Um, if you've seen it, you'll understand. If not, go watch it. It's well worth your time to watch this movie. It's hilarious. But baby steps.
Mhm.
In the movie, they talk about baby steps, and even coaches, you'll hear them reference, well, if we're down by 21 points, there's no 21-point touchdowns. You've got to focus solely on the next play, just trying to string together enough baby steps, first downs in football,
Mhm.
uh, to try to chip away. I think that's what we saw when Texas had all the momentum against going back to the Mississippi State game. Early in the
Mhm.
game, Texas looked like they were going to run away with it. Mississippi State just kept chipping away, play by play, making first downs and eventually getting points, so that you don't turn momentum unless you're lucky enough to get a pick six or a block punt or something.
Mhm.
You don't turn it on one play.
Yeah.
And guys sometimes try to do too much. So I think what you do is you stick to your fundamentals, you stick
Mhm.
to baby steps, and then eventually, if you're doing enough things right consistently, you do hit that big play.
Mhm.
The cornerback falls down or gets fooled on a sluggo route or something and bites, and now you got the big play to swing momentum back your way.
For sure. Yeah. Despite this one little semi setback, I'll even say not even a full setback because he still had a good performance in his own right. Last four races of the year: Brazil, Las Vegas, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi. All tracks that Max has been very successful at in the past. So I'm still, riding high, having high hopes that Max will continue to be consistent, and just be himself generally. And Lando and Oscar will maybe have one or two races where they falter, and that's where Max will take it. So I'm
Okay.
I'm not I'm not quite so worried. I like the call back to the Texas game. This really feels like, while Texas is making this monumental comeback, but then Mississippi State scores again.
Right.
That kind of thing. It's a setback, and it makes the comeback a little
On a
harder. But
really on a really weird little backward shovel pass
hmm
that that should have gone for 5 yards, but Texas being without their All American safety in that game, she was out
hmm
with an injury. The
yeah,
guy filling in for him is a backup for a reason. No disrespect, but you just go, well, if Texas had their All American safety there, that's a 5 yard gain.
yeah.
The fact that they could come back after that play, that was about when I thought it was done, and they shocked
Mm.
me, and I love that they shocked me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, having your hopes and dreams feeling like they're crushed, but then suddenly being proven wrong and having them come
Well,
true is such an
I
incredible
I
feeling.
don't I don't know that I had any hopes and dreams about
Bit
that game
dramatic.
in particular. That's a little bit overboard, but
You get the
but
point though. Like
no, yeah,
feeling let down only to then be brought up back up
sure,
again is a really great feeling
sure,
for sure.
absolutely.
Um,
All right.
I think that's a great note to end it on. Thank you for joining me again.
Hey, thanks
Uh,
for having me again.
mhm. And thank you all who listened this far. Make sure to check us out on Spotify and YouTube and Instagram. And we will be back again next week. So yeah. Thank you
Okay.
guys for tuning in.
God bless.
God bless you all. See ya.